The city lights of Manhattan sparkled like scattered jewels 40 floors below, but Marina Blackwood's attention was fixed on the small screen in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she scrolled through the photos, each one a dagger to her heart. Victor and another woman, their bodies intertwined in what was clearly their bedroom, her bedroom. The timestamp showed they were taken just 3 days ago, while she was at her doctor's appointment, hearing their unborn daughter's heartbeat for the first time. 7 months pregnant and feeling as heavy as her heart, Marina sat in the marble bathroom of their penthouse, the pregnancy test from 8 years ago, still tucked away in her jewelry box, like a talisman of happier times. Back then, Victor had swept her off her feet with grand romantic gestures and promises of forever. Tonight was their ruby anniversary. 8 years of what she thought was love, now revealed as an elaborate performance. The bathroom door creaked, and Victor's reflection appeared in the mirror behind her. Even now, even knowing what she knew, he was devastatingly handsome. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders. The same shoulders she had cried on when her father died, leaving her a substantial trust fund that had helped launch Victor's investment firm. "Sweetheart, you've been in here for 20 minutes, he said, his voice warm with what sounded like genuine concern. "The car is waiting. You know how Mother gets when we're late." Marina quickly darkened her phone screen, slipping it into her clutch. She forced a smile, the same practiced expression she'd perfected over months of growing suspicion. "Just feeling a bit nauseous. The baby's been active all day." Victor's hand found the small of her back, and she had to suppress the urge to flinch. His touch, once electric, now felt contaminated. "Maybe we should cancel. I could tell Mother. You're not feeling well." For a moment, hope flickered in Marina's chest. Perhaps this was her chance to confront him privately, to demand the truth. But then she remembered the photos, the cruel intimacy of them, and her resolve hardened. No, she needed witnesses for what was coming next. "I'll be fine," she said, allowing him to help her to her feet. "Besides, I have something special planned for tonight." The restaurant Eleanor Hawley had chosen was predictably ostentatious. Crystal chandeliers, gold leaf details, and a wine list that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Their private dining room overlooked the glittering cityscape, a stage set for what Marina suspected would be the performance of her lifetime. Eleanor sat at the head of the table like the queen she believed herself to be, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her diamonds catching the candlelight. She barely glanced up when Marina and Victor arrived, too busy directing the staff on proper napkin folding. "Marina, darling," Eleanor said without warmth, "you look substantial. I do hope the baby isn't making you retain too much water." Before Marina could respond, Victor's business partner, David Shun, arrived with his wife Lisa, followed by Victor's younger sister Patricia and her husband. The conversation flowed around Marina like water around a stone. Talk of stock prices, charity galas, and summer plans in the Hamptons. She nodded and smiled at appropriate intervals, her mind elsewhere. It was when the wine was being poured that Marina saw her. The young woman who entered with Patricia was stunning in an ethereal way, long auburn hair, emerald eyes, and a figure that belonged in a Renaissance painting. She wore a flowing jade dress that complemented her coloring perfectly, but it was the jewelry at her throat that made Marina's blood run cold. The ruby necklace had belonged to Marina's grandmother, a family heirloom that had mysteriously vanished from her jewelry box 3 weeks ago. The same box where Victor had access to everything, where he'd helped her search for it with mock concern and reassuring words about how these things always turned up. "Everyone," Patricia announced, her voice bright with forced cheer, "I'd like you to meet my friend Celeste Rivera. She's an incredibly talented fashion designer." Celeste smiled shyly, her fingers unconsciously touching the stolen rubies at her throat. "Thank you so much for including me. This place is incredible." Marina watched her husband's face carefully. The flash of panic that crossed his features lasted only a fraction of a second before his practiced charm reasserted itself. But she had seen it, that moment of raw fear when his two worlds collided without his permission. "Celeste," Victor said smoothly, rising to pull out her chair, "what a lovely surprise. Patricia didn't mention you'd be joining us." The girl, for that's what she was, Marina realized, barely older than Patricia, blushed prettily. "I hope that's okay. Patricia insisted I come, said it would be good for my career to meet people in the art world." Her eyes found Marina's across the table. "You must be Marina. Patricia told me you run the Meridian Gallery. Your exhibition on contemporary female artists was revolutionary." The irony was almost laughable. Here was Victor's mistress, praising Marina's work while wearing her stolen jewelry, completely unaware that she was sitting at the anniversary dinner of the man who was presumably promising her a future. "How kind of you to say," Marina replied, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "And what a beautiful necklace. Rubies are so timeless, don't you think?" Celeste's hand flew to her throat again, her cheeks flushing. Deeper. "Oh, this? It was a gift from someone very special. He said it belonged to his grandmother, that he wanted me to have something with history." The lie was so audacious, so perfectly Victor, that Marina almost admired it. He hadn't just stolen her jewelry. He'd rewritten its provenance, making himself the romantic hero, bestowing family treasures on his beloved. As the first course arrived, delicate canapes arranged like small works of art, Marina felt her daughter kick strongly against her ribs, as if sensing the tension in the room. She placed a protective hand on her belly, drawing strength from the life growing within her. Tonight, Victor would learn that some performances had consequences, and some women fought back. Marina set down her wine glass. She'd been pretending to sip sparkling cider all evening, and reached into her purse. The manila envelope felt substantial in her hands, weighted with months of careful investigation. She had learned patience. From her years in the art world, studying pieces for authenticity, waiting for the right moment to reveal a treasure or expose a forgery. "Before we toast," Marina said, her voice cutting through the ambient chatter, "I have something to share with everyone. A little anniversary surprise." Victor's fork paused halfway to his mouth, suspicion flickering in his dark eyes. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" "Celebrating 8 years of marriage," Marina replied sweetly, sliding the first photograph across the table. It landed face up next to Victor's plate, a surveillance photo of him and Celeste entering a downtown apartment building, his arm around her waist, her face tilted up toward his in obvious adoration. Eleanor's sharp intake of breath was audible. Patricia dropped her napkin. David Chun leaned forward, his businessman's instincts immediately recognizing trouble. Celeste's face had gone pale as marble, her hand instinctively moving to cover the ruby necklace. "I don't understand," she whispered. "That's my husband," Marina explained gently, as if she were giving a gallery tour to confused visitors. "And that's the apartment he purchased 6 months ago using funds from my trust account. The one established by my late father for our family's future." She pulled out more documents, spreading them across the white tablecloth like tarot cards, revealing an unwelcome fate. Bank statements, transfer records, incorporation papers for a business called Rivera Designs, LLC. "Victor has been quite generous with my inheritance," Marina continued, her voice gaining strength. $50,000 for the initial apartment lease. Another $100,000 for inventory and equipment for Celeste's fashion line. Various smaller amounts for what the bank records charmingly list as lifestyle expenses. Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is ridiculous, Marina. you're having some kind of breakdown. The pregnancy hormones. Sit down, Marina commanded, and something in her tone made him comply despite himself. I'm not finished. She turned to Celeste, whose green eyes were now swimming with tears. You didn't know, did you? That he's married. That the money funding your dreams was stolen from his pregnant wife. He told me he was divorced, Celeste managed, her voice breaking. He showed me papers. He said his ex-wife was vindictive, trying to destroy him financially, but that the final decree was just waiting for the judge's signature. Marina almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Those were draft papers his lawyer drew up for leverage in case I discovered his affair. They were never filed. In fact, Victor's been quite careful to keep our marriage intact, at least on paper. It's much easier to access my accounts as my husband than as my ex-husband. She produced another document, this one bearing an official seal. This is from Hartwell Investigations. Mr. Marcus Hartwell has been documenting Victor's activities for the past 4 months. Would you like to know what else he found? Eleanor finally found her voice. This is preposterous. My son would never... Your son has been using my name to forge documents, Marina interrupted. He's established multiple shell companies using my social security number and trust account information. Rivera Designs is just one of them. There's also a consulting firm that's been billing phantom services to his investment clients, and a real estate holding company that owns properties I've never seen. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a recording app. I also have audio recordings of conversations between Victor and his lawyer, discussing how to gradually transfer my assets without my knowledge. Conversations that took place in our home office while I was supposedly napping upstairs. The silence that followed was deafening. Marina could hear her own heartbeat, feel her daughter moving restlessly, as if sensing the tension. Victor's composure finally cracked completely. You conniving bitch, he snarled, his handsome face twisting with rage. You think you're so smart, playing detective while I was building our future. Our future? Marina laughed, a sound sharp as breaking glass. You mean your future with her. Did you tell Celeste about the other women, Victor? The gallery owner in Soho you were seeing before her? The interior designer from last year? Or were they all just practice runs for your perfect exit strategy? Celeste made a strangled sound, pressing her hand to her mouth. Patricia reached for her arm, her own face shocked and pale. I loved you, Victor said, but his words rang hollow now. I still love you. This thing with Celeste, it just happened. I was lonely. You were always so focused on work. And then the pregnancy. Stop, Marina commanded. Don't you dare try to make this my fault. And don't insult Celeste by calling her a thing. She's a talented young woman who deserves better than being used as your escape route. She stood carefully, her hand on her belly for support. Celeste, the necklace you're wearing belonged to my grandmother. Victor stole it from my jewelry box 3 weeks ago. I'd like it back, please. With shaking hands, Celeste unclasped the rubies, the gems catching the light one last time before she placed them on the table. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never would have. If I had known ... double quotes. I believe you, Marina said softly. You're as much his victim as I am. She gathered her documents, leaving the photos scattered across the table like evidence at a crime. Scene. Victor, my lawyer will contact you tomorrow morning. We'll be filing for divorce and pressing charges for fraud and identity theft. I suggest you use tonight to pack whatever belongings you can prove you purchased with your own money. It won't be much. As she turned toward the door, Eleanor's voice lashed out behind her. You won't get away with this. The Hawley family has influence in this city. We'll destroy you. Marina paused, looking back at the woman who had never accepted. Never thought her good enough for the golden boy son. Mrs. Hawley, Your family's influence is built on your son's reputation and business connections. After tonight, after the criminal charges, after the financial press gets hold of this story, I don't think you'll find people very eager to associate with the Hawley name." She walked out of that restaurant with her head high and her heart lighter. And it had been in months, leaving behind the wreckage of lies and the beginning of truth. Marina's apartment felt different when she returned that night. The familiar spaces seemed to belong to someone else, someone who had believed in love and trust and forever. She moved through the rooms slowly, her hand trailing along surfaces she had once thought would always be home. The baby kicked strongly, and Marina pressed both hands to her belly. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "Mama's going to take care of everything." Her phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Patricia apologizing, from David Chun asking if she needed anything, from Eleanor Hawley making increasingly desperate. Threats. She ignored them all except one from her brother James. Saw the news already hitting financial blogs. "Come stay with me tonight. Sarah's making up the guest room." Marina smiled for the first time in hours. James had always been her protector, even though she was 3 years older. When she'd first told him about her suspicions regarding Victor, he'd wanted to hire private security and confront Victor directly. It had taken all her persuasion to convince him to let her handle things her way. She was packing an overnight bag when she heard Victor's key in the lock. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was her apartment, purchased with her money. She had every right to be here. "Marina!" His voice echoed through the hallway, desperate and angry. "Marina, we need to talk." She emerged from the bedroom to find him standing in the living room, his perfect hair disheveled, his tie loosened. The controlled, polished Victor was gone, replaced by someone she barely recognized. "There's nothing to discuss," she said calmly. "I meant what I said at dinner. You need to leave." "You can't be serious about pressing charges," he said, moving closer. "Think about what this will do to our child. Do you want our daughter growing up knowing her father is in prison?" "I want our daughter growing up knowing her mother has integrity," Marina replied. "And I want her to learn that actions have consequences." Victor's face cycled through emotions: anger, desperation, calculation. She could almost see him weighing his options, looking for an angle to work. "I can explain everything," he said. "Finally. The money, Celeste, all of it. I was trying to protect you. The investment firm was in trouble. I needed capital quickly, and I knew if I told you about the problems you'd worry, especially with the pregnancy." It was a lie so transparent that Marina almost felt insulted by his assumption that she'd believe it. "Victor, I've seen the books. Your firm is more profitable than ever. You didn't need my money for business. You needed it to fund your new life." "Okay, fine," he snapped, his mask slipping further. "Maybe I did want out. Can you blame me? You've been cold for months, always tired, always focused on the baby. When was the last time we were intimate? When was the last time you looked at me the way you used to?" The cruelty of it took her breath away. "I've been growing your child, Victor. I've been exhausted because I'm creating a human being. And yes, I've been distant because some part of me knew you were lying to me every single day." Her phone rang, and James's name appeared on the screen. She answered immediately, grateful for the interruption. "Marina, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm in the lobby of your building." "Come up," she said. Victor was just leaving. "I'm not going anywhere," Victor said, but his bravado was wearing thin. "This is my home, too." "Actually, it's not," Marina replied. "I checked the deed this afternoon. The apartment is in my name only, purchased with funds from my trust. You have no legal right to be here." James appeared in the doorway, moments later, tall and solid and reassuring. He took in the scene quickly. Marina's overnight bag, Victor's. agitated state, the tension crackling between them. "Hey, sis," he said gently, then turned to Victor with considerably less warmth. "Halle, James, this is between Marina and me," Victor said, but he took a step back. James had played college football and still carried himself like someone who could handle trouble. "Not anymore, it's not," James replied. "Marina, you ready to go?" As they prepared to leave, Victor made one last desperate play. "The art world is small, Marina. People talk. When this gets out, when they know you destroyed a marriage over suspicion and jealousy, do you think anyone will want to work with you? Your reputation will be ruined." Marina paused at the door, looking back at the man she had loved, had trusted with everything. "My reputation will survive, Victor. Truth has a way of revealing itself, and I have evidence of everything you've done. The question is whether yours will." She walked out with James, leaving Victor alone in the apartment that had never really been his home. 3 days later, Marina sat in her lawyer's office, reviewing the formal charges being filed. Fraud, identity theft, forgery, embezzlement. The list was longer than she had expected. Her lawyer, Catherine Moore, was a sharp woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "The district attorney is very interested in this case," Catherine said. "Financial fraud involving family trusts is taken seriously, especially when there's a pattern of behavior. And Marina, there is definitely a pattern." "What do you mean?" Catherine slid a folder across the desk. "We did some digging into Victor's background. He's done this before. Not the marriage part, but the financial manipulation. There were complaints filed in Chicago 5 years ago, and in Boston before that. Young women, all with family money, all claiming he seduced them and then gained access to their accounts. The cases were settled out of court." Marina felt sick. "He's done this to other women? 3 that we can prove?" "There may be more. The good news is that this establishes a pattern that supports our case. The bad news is that you weren't his first victim, and Celeste probably wouldn't have been his last." That evening, Marina was surprised to receive a call from an unknown number. When she answered, Celeste's tentative voice came through the speaker. "Marina, I hope it's okay that I called. Patricia gave me your number." "Of course," Marina said. "How are you holding up?" "Not well," Celeste admitted. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times his stories didn't quite add up. I feel so stupid." "You're not stupid," Marina said firmly. "You're young and talented, and you trusted someone who seemed trustworthy. That's not stupidity. It's humanity." There was silence on the other end, then the sound of soft crying. "I gave up everything for him," Celeste whispered. "I left art school, moved to New York, turned down other opportunities because he said he'd take care of everything. And now you start over," Marina said gently. "Celeste, you're incredibly talented. I meant what I said about your work. When this is all settled, I'd like to discuss featuring your designs in my gallery. A collaboration between visual art and fashion could be exactly what both our careers need. You would do that? After everything? We're both his victims, Celeste. We should be allies, not enemies." As Marina hung up the phone, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just for justice, but for the possibility of something better rising from the ashes of betrayal. The courtroom was packed with reporters and financial industry observers when Victor's hearing began 2 weeks later. Marina sat in the front row, her hands folded over her growing belly, watching as the man she had once loved was led to the defendant's table in handcuffs. He had lost weight since their anniversary dinner, his face gaunt and hollow. The expensive suits had been replaced with a standard orange jumpsuit, and his once perfect hair hung limp and unwashed. For a moment, Marina felt a flicker of the old sympathy, before remembering the photos on his phone and the tears on Celeste's face. The prosecutor. Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Torres was methodical in her presentation of evidence. Bank records, forged documents, testimony from the forensic accountant who had helped Marina uncover the fraud. Each piece of evidence was another nail in Victor's coffin. The defendant engaged in a systematic pattern of financial abuse, Torres told the jury. He targeted women with substantial assets, gained their trust through romantic relationships, and then methodically stole from them. Mrs. Blackwood represents not just his most recent victim, but his most ambitious theft, over $800,000 diverted from her family trust. Marina's breath caught. $800,000? She had known it was substantial, but hearing the figure spoken aloud in court made the betrayal feel even more enormous. Victor's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender named Gerald Marks, did his best with an impossible case. My client made mistakes in his personal life, but these were crimes of passion, not premeditation. He was struggling with the pressures of impending fatherhood and made poor decisions. It was a weak defense, made weaker by the mountain of evidence against him. The forged signatures alone were enough for multiple felony convictions, and the paper trail Catherine Moore had assembled was airtight. During the lunch recess, Marina was surprised to see Eleanor Hawley approaching her in the courthouse corridor. Victor's mother looked every one of her 65 years, her usual imperious bearing replaced by something that looked almost like defeat. "I need to speak with you," Eleanor said without preamble. They found a quiet corner near the windows overlooking the city. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, her hands twisted in her expensive handbag. "I knew," she said finally, "about the other women, about the money. I thought if he just found the right situation, he would settle down, become responsible." Marina stared at her. "You knew he was stealing from me?" "I suspected. When he suddenly had money for expensive gifts, for investments, when his lifestyle exceeded what his firm was paying him, ... Eleanor's voice trailed off. "I told myself it was your money anyway, that you were married, that what was yours was his. But you knew about Celeste. You helped him deceive her." Eleanor nodded miserably. "He said you were cold, that the marriage was over in all but name. He said after the baby was born, you'd divorce amicably and he'd be free to start over. I thought Celeste was sweet. Young, but sweet. I thought she'd be good for him." The admission hung between them like a toxic cloud. Marina felt her daughter kick, as if responding to her mother's emotional turmoil. "Why are you telling?" Marina asked. "Because I'm dying," Eleanor said simply. "Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I can't go to my grave knowing I helped destroy an innocent young woman's life and watched my son become a criminal." Marina felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Whatever their differences, Eleanor was still a mother watching her child face prison. "What do you want from me?" Marina asked. "Testimony," Eleanor said. "I want to testify for the prosecution. I have recordings, documents, evidence of his other victims. I want to make sure he can't do this to anyone else." The afternoon session was explosive. Eleanor Hale's testimony was devastating, not just because of what she revealed, but because she was Victor's own mother. She provided details about the Chicago and Boston victims, about conversations where Victor had bragged about his ability to manipulate wealthy women. He called it playing the long game. Eleanor testified, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. He said the key was to make them feel loved and secure before gradually gaining access to their resources. Victor's face was a mask of betrayal and rage as he watched his mother destroy any chance he had of avoiding prison. When the prosecutor asked if she had any evidence of his plans regarding Marina specifically, Eleanor reached into her purse. "This is a recording I made of a conversation between Victor and his lawyer 3 months ago," she said, holding up a small device. I was concerned about potential legal exposure for the family. The recording was damning. Victor's voice filled the courtroom. The beauty of it is, once the baby's born and she's dealing with postpartum recovery, I can gradually transfer everything to offshore accounts. By the time she realizes what's happening, Celeste and I will be settled in Europe, with enough money to last indefinitely. Marina felt sick. The calculation in his voice, the casual way he discussed stealing not just her money, but her child's future, was more brutal than any physical assault could have been. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. As Victor was led away to await sentencing, he turned back to look at Marina one last time. The man who had once made her believe in fairy tales was gone, replaced by a stranger whose eyes held nothing but bitter resentment. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Marina, shouting questions about her feelings, her plans, her baby's future. James and Catherine formed a protective barrier as they made their way to the car. Mrs. Blackwood, what would you say to other women who might be in similar situations? One reporter called out. Marina paused, turning back to face the cameras. I would say trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. And remember that no amount of love or loyalty should cost you your self-respect or your financial security. As they drove away from the courthouse, Marina felt a weight lifting from her chest. The legal battle was over, but her real life was just beginning. 6 months later, Marina stood in the main gallery of her new space in Chelsea, watching as workers hung the final pieces for the opening exhibition. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating canvases that seemed to glow with inner life. The lighting on the Rivera piece needs to be adjusted, she called to the gallery technician, pointing to a stunning evening gown that had been transformed into a sculptural art piece. Celeste worked too hard on those details to have them lost. In shadow, her daughter Sophia gurgled from her carrier, tiny fists waving at the colorful artwork around them. At 3 months old, she was already showing signs of her mother's intense curiosity, her dark eyes following movement and light with remarkable focus. Celeste emerged from the back office, her arms full of fabric samples and design sketches. The past months had transformed her from the broken girl at the anniversary dinner into a confident artist with a vision. Her fashion line had evolved into something unique, wearable art that bridged the gap between high fashion and gallery pieces. I think the installation is perfect, Celeste said, studying her work with critical eyes. I never imagined my designs would be displayed like this, as fine art rather than just clothing. They were always fine art, Marina replied. Victor just tried to reduce them to mere commerce. You're creating something entirely new. The opening reception that evening was everything Marina had hoped for. Critics, collectors, and fashion. Enthusiasts mingled in the soaring space, examining pieces that challenged traditional boundaries between disciplines. The collaboration between Marina's curatorial vision and Celeste's artistic innovation had created something neither could have achieved alone. James appeared at Marina's elbow, carrying Sophia, who had been charming guests all evening. I think someone's getting tired, he said, noting the baby's drooping eyelids. 1 more hour, Marina said, smiling at her daughter. I want her to see this, to remember that Mama built something beautiful from something broken. Patricia Hawley approached them, looking hesitant but hopeful. She had been the only member of Victor's family to reach out after the trial, expressing genuine remorse for her role in enabling his deception. Marina, the exhibition is incredible, Patricia said. Mother would have. Well, she would have been proud of what you've accomplished. Eleanor had passed away just 2 weeks after Victor's sentencing, her final weeks spent trying to make amends for the damage she had enabled. She had left her entire estate to a foundation supporting victims of financial abuse, with the provision that Marina serve as one of the trustees. She tried to do the right thing at the end, Marina said gently. That matters. As the evening wound down, Marina found herself alone with Celeste in the main gallery, surrounded by the fruits of their unlikely partnership. I got a call from the Fashion Institute today, Celeste said, her voice careful. They want me to teach a masterclass on conceptual design. And there's interest from Milan Fashion Week. That's wonderful, Marina said, meaning it completely. You deserve every opportunity that comes your way. I wouldn't have any of this without you, Celeste replied. You could have destroyed me along with Victor. Instead, you gave me a chance to rebuild. Marina adjusted Sophia's blanket, thinking about the strange turns life could take. We both deserved better than we got from him, but we also both deserved better than staying broken. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Moore. Victor's. Parole hearing denied. Minimum 8 years before next review. Thought you'd want to know. Marina felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, finality. Victor would serve his time, and she would continue building her new life. Justice had been served, but more importantly, she had discovered her own strength. What are you thinking about? Celeste asked, noting Marina's distant expression. They. Future, Marina said, looking around at the gallery that bore her name, at the art that would inspire others, at the daughter who would grow up knowing her mother was nobody's victim. I'm thinking about all the possibilities we couldn't see when we were living in his shadow. As they prepared to close the gallery for the night, Marina caught her reflection in the darkened windows. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who had sat in that restaurant 6 months ago, discovering betrayal. This woman was stronger, more certain, surrounded by the life she had chosen rather than the one that had been chosen for her. Sophia stirred in her carrier, making the soft sounds that meant she was ready for home and feeding and the quiet contentment of evening routine. Marina gathered her things, said good night to Celeste, and stepped out into the New York night. The city lights sparkled around them like possibilities, and Marina Blackwood walked toward her future with confidence, her daughter in her arms. Her heart finally, completely her own. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something meaningful from the choices she made freely. Tonight, though, was perfect exactly as it was. A woman, her child, and the infinite potential of a life reclaimed.